Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. It's great to have you here with us again. I'm Emma.
And I'm Jack. Thanks for joining us.
Whether you're listening while you're driving, walking, making coffee, or just taking a little break from your day, we're really happy you're here.
And today, we're talking about something that sounds very simple, but somehow becomes surprisingly difficult when you actually have to do it.
Saying no.
Yeah, just two little letters.
No,
That sounded very easy.
because you asked me to say one word.
Fair enough.
But saying no to someone in real life can be much harder.
Especially when you don't want to hurt their feelings.
Or when you don't want them to think you're selfish.
Or when it's your boss.
That's a different level of difficulty.
Definitely.
Or when it's a friend you've known for years.
Or someone you really like, but you just don't want to do what they're asking.
And that's where things get interesting in English.
Because sometimes saying just no is grammatically correct, but it doesn't always communicate what you actually mean.
Right.
You might want to say no to the request, but you don't want to reject the person.
And that's an important difference.
So today we're going to look at how people actually handle these situations in everyday English.
Not just a list of polite expressions.
We're going to look at conversations,
Different situations.
different relationships,
Different levels of politeness.
and probably one of the biggest problems people have when they say no.
Which one?
They explain too much.
Oh, absolutely.
They feel guilty, so they start giving a 10-minute explanation.
And somehow, the longer the explanation gets, the less confident they sound.
Exactly.
Well, you said we weren't going to overuse that word.
Right, I walked into that one.
You did.
Okay, let's start with a situation.
A real one.
A very real one.
Okay.
Imagine it's Wednesday afternoon. You're at work. You've already had a busy day. You have 3 things you need to finish before you go home.
Sounds familiar.
Your colleague walks over to your desk,
Yoo-ho.
and he says, "Hey Emma, do you have a minute?"
That sentence is dangerous.
Why?
Because when someone says, "Do you have a minute?" it almost never means 1 minute.
That's true.
It usually means, "I'm about to ask you for something."
Okay, let's continue. Hey Emma, do you have a minute?
Sure, what's up?
I'm trying to finish this report, but I'm completely stuck. Would you mind taking a look at it?
Emily.
It's probably going to take about 30 minutes.
And I already have 3 things to finish.
So what do you say?
I might say sure.
Even though you don't want to.
That's the problem.
Why would you say yes?
Because I don't want to seem unhelpful.
And there it is.
What?
That's the real problem.
What do you mean?
You don't actually want to say yes. You're saying yes because you're worried about what happens if you say no.
That's true.
And I think a lot of people do that.
They do.
They say yes because saying no makes them uncomfortable.
And then they become resentful later.
Exactly.
You agree to help your coworker, you stay late, you miss your train, you go home tired, and then you're thinking, why did I agree to this?
And the funny thing is, your coworker might not even know that you didn't want to help.
Right.
From their point of view, you said yes.
So they assume you're okay with it.
Which means the problem started when you said yes, even though you meant no.
That's a really important point.
So let's imagine you actually want to say no.
Okay.
Your coworker asks, would you mind taking a look at this?
I could say, sorry, I can't. I've got a lot on my plate right now.
That's good.
Or, I'd love to help, but I'm trying to finish a few things before I leave.
Also good.
Or maybe, I'm afraid I won't be able to today.
That's a little more formal.
It is.
And that's our first important point.
Which is,
There isn't one perfect way to say no.
exactly.
The right expression depends on the person, the relationship, the situation, and how strong your refusal needs to be.
If it's a close friend, I might say something very simple.
Like,
Sorry, I can't tonight.
if it's your manager,
I'd probably be more careful.
maybe.
I can do that, but I'd need to move something else to tomorrow.
That's very different.
Because I'm not necessarily saying no to the task.
You're saying no to doing everything at the same time.
Exactly.
And that distinction is incredibly useful at work.
Because sometimes you don't actually have to say no.
You just need to say, I can't do all of this at once.
Right.
So instead of saying, no, I can't do it, you might say,
I can take this on, but I'll need a little more time.
or,
I can help with this, but I won't be able to finish it today.
or,
I can do this by Friday, but I can't get it done by tomorrow.
now you're negotiating.
Exactly.
And that's a much more useful skill than simply knowing how to say no.
Because real life isn't always yes or no.
Sometimes it's,
Yes, but not now.
yes, but not everything.
Yes, but I need more time.
Yes, but I need help.
Or no, but here's what I can do instead.
That's a very natural way to think about communication.
And it helps you sound cooperative without automatically agreeing to everything.
Let's go back to that coworker.
Okay.
He says, would you mind taking a look at this?
I'd say I'd love to help, but I've got a deadline this afternoon.
That's a good one.
And maybe, if you still need help tomorrow, I can take a look then.
Now you've done something really useful.
What?
You've said no to today without rejecting the person.
Right.
And you've offered an alternative.
Which makes the conversation much easier.
Let's talk about that expression, I'd love to, but.
Very useful.
And very common.
It sounds friendly because you're acknowledging that, under different circumstances, you'd be willing to help.
For example,
I'd love to come, but I already have plans.
I'd love to help, but I'm really busy today.
I'd love to join you, but I can't make it tonight.
I'd love to stay, but I have an early start tomorrow.
There's something interesting about this expression.
What?
Sometimes people use it when they genuinely would like to do something.
And sometimes.
Sometimes it's just a polite way of saying no.
Right.
If someone invites me to a party and I say, I'd love to come, but I have other plans, I may genuinely wish I could go.
But you might also just be politely declining.
Exactly.
So the listener doesn't necessarily need to know whether you really wanted to go.
They just need to understand that you're not available.
And that's another interesting thing about natural English.
What's that?
We often don't say everything directly.
Especially when we're talking about relationships.
Right.
If someone says maybe another time, what do you understand?
Usually that means no for now.
Exactly.
But it doesn't necessarily mean there will definitely be another time.
Correct.
That's important for English learners.
Very.
Because if someone says, maybe another time, you shouldn't necessarily start planning another date immediately.
Right.
It can simply be a soft way of saying no.
And that's where tone becomes important.
Because the same words can mean different things depending on how you say them.
Definitely.
For example, maybe.
Maybe.
That could mean,
I'm genuinely considering it.
or,
I'm probably not interested, but I don't want to say no directly.
or.
I have no idea yet.
So context matters.
Always.
Let's try another situation.
Okay.
Your friend calls you Friday afternoon. Hey, we're going out tonight. You should come.
Oh, I'd love to, but I'm exhausted.
Come on, it'll be fun.
I know, I just really need a quiet night.
You sure?
Yeah, maybe next time.
That sounds completely natural.
Because I'm not angry.
You're not criticizing the invitation.
I'm just saying that I don't want to go tonight.
That's the key.
You don't need to invent a dramatic excuse every time you say no.
That's something people do a lot.
They make up complicated reasons.
Why?
Because they think I don't want to isn't a good enough reason.
That's interesting.
Sometimes it isn't.
What do you mean?
If my boss asks me to attend an important meeting, I don't want to probably isn't a useful response.
Fair.
But if a friend invites me to a movie and I don't feel like going, I don't necessarily need a complicated explanation.
So with friends, you can often be more direct.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm not really in the mood tonight.
Very natural.
I'm pretty tired. I think I'll stay in tonight.
Also natural.
I don't really feel like going out tonight.
That's a very useful expression.
Let's break that one down.
Okay.
I don't feel like.
It means you don't have the desire or energy to do something at that moment.
I don't feel like cooking.
Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter.
I don't feel like going out.
Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter.
I don't feel like talking right now.
Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter.
I don't feel like working.
That one might be dangerous.
Especially if you're at work.
Very dangerous.
But it's natural English.
It is.
And notice something.
What?
You don't have to say, I don't want to.
Right.
You can soften it with, I don't feel like.
Which sounds less direct.
And sometimes that's exactly what you need.
But there's another expression that people use a lot.
Which one?
I'm afraid I can't.
Yes.
This one can sound strange to learners.
Because afraid usually means scared.
Right.
So why are we saying we're afraid?
Here, I'm afraid is a polite way of introducing something negative or disappointing.
For example,
I'm afraid I can't make it.
I'm afraid that's not possible.
I'm afraid we're fully booked.
I'm afraid I won't be able to help with that.
It's more formal and polite.
Would you use it with your best friend?
Probably not very often.
Why not?
It could sound too formal depending on the situation.
So if my best friend says, "Can you come over tonight?"
I'd probably say, sorry, I can't tonight.
But if a customer asks you for something your company can't provide,
You might say, I'm afraid we don't offer that service.
very different.
Same basic idea, different relationship.
This is why learning English through situations is so useful.
Because you don't just learn the words.
You learn where they belong.
Exactly.
Let's talk about another difficult situation.
Okay.
Someone asks you a personal question.
That's a good one.
Maybe someone at work asks, "How much money do you make?"
Oh,
What would you say?
I might laugh and say, I'd rather not say.
Very natural.
Or I don't really talk about that.
That's useful.
Or simply, that's a little personal.
I like that ones.
It tells them you've noticed the question is too personal without attacking them.
And you don't have to explain why.
Right.
You don't have to say, "I'm sorry, but I don't want to tell you because."
You can just say, I'd rather not say.
That's enough.
And that's something we should talk about.
What?
You are allowed to have boundaries,
Even in another language.
especially when you're learning another language. People sometimes feel like they have to produce a perfect explanation for everything.
That's true.
But a boundary doesn't need a long speech.
I'd rather not talk about that.
That's a complete sentence.
I can't do that.
Complete sentence.
I'm not comfortable with that.
Complete sentence.
I'd rather not.
Complete sentence.
And they're all useful.
Let's talk about I'd rather not.
Okay.
It's a very useful way to refuse something without sounding aggressive.
For example,
Would you like to discuss your personal finances?
I'd rather not.
Would you like to stay later tonight?
I'd rather not.
Would you like to talk about what happened?
I'd rather not talk about it right now.
Very natural.
But there's a difference between "I don't want to" and "I'd rather not."
Yes,
The second one is usually softer.
and it gives the feeling that you're choosing one option over another.
I'd rather stay home.
I'd rather not discuss it.
I'd rather do it tomorrow.
I'd rather not get involved.
That's a useful structure.
Very.
Now let's make the situation more difficult.
Go ahead.
Your boss asks you to work late.
Okay,
You already have plans.
this happens.
Your boss says, "Could you stay until 8 tonight? We really need to get this finished."
I can't just say no.
Why not?
Because the situation has a power difference.
Good point.
I'm not talking to a friend, I'm talking to my manager.
So what could you say?
I could say, I have a commitment tonight, so I'm afraid I won't be able to stay until 8.
That's polite.
Then I might add, but I can stay another 30 minutes if that helps.
That's excellent.
Because I'm not simply refusing.
You're explaining what you can do.
Right.
And that can change the whole conversation.
Maybe my manager says, that's fine, 30 minutes would be helpful.
Problem solved.
Exactly.
But what if your manager says, I really need you to stay until 8?
Then I'd have to be clearer.
What would you say?
I'm sorry, but I really can't stay that late tonight. I have a commitment I can't change.
That's firm.
It needs to be.
And that's another important lesson.
What?
Being polite doesn't mean being vague.
Yes.
Sometimes people think that if they want to be polite, they have to make their answer so soft that nobody can tell what they're saying.
Like. Maybe.
We'll see.
I'll try.
I might be able to.
Let me think about it.
And then the other person still doesn't know whether you mean yes or no.
Exactly.
Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is be clear.
That's a really important idea.
Because if you say, maybe I'll help you tomorrow, when you know you're not going to, you've only delayed the problem.
And you may make things worse.
So instead of saying something vague, you can say,
I'm sorry, but I won't be able to help with that.
clear,
Polite.
honest.
And no unnecessary explanation.
That's the balance we're looking for.
Clear without being rude.
Kind without automatically saying yes.
And honest without oversharing.
I like that.
Me too.
Let's talk about one of my least favorite expressions.
Which one?
I'll try.
Oh yes.
Why don't you like it?
Because it can mean almost anything.
Exactly.
If someone asks, can you finish this by Friday?
I'll try.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll do it.
Maybe.
Maybe I won't.
Right.
So why do people say it?
Because it feels safer than saying no.
You're avoiding the discomfort.
Yes.
But you're also avoiding clarity.
And sometimes the other person hears I'll try as yes.
Then Friday comes.
And the work isn't done.
And suddenly there's a bigger problem.
Exactly.
So what could we say instead?
If you're genuinely unsure, say that.
For example,
I'm not sure I'll be able to finish it by Friday.
much clearer.
Or, I can try, but I can't promise it'll be ready by Friday.
That's honest.
Or if you know you can't. I don't think I'll be able to finish it by Friday.
That's much better than a vague, I'll try.
Because now the other person can make another plan.
That's the hidden value of saying no.
What do you mean?
A clear no gives other people information.
That's true.
If I tell you I can't help, you can find someone else.
If you tell me you can't come, I can make other plans.
If you tell your manager you can't finish something by Friday, they can change the deadline.
Or give the task to someone else.
So saying no isn't always selfish.
Sometimes it's actually responsible.
That's a good distinction.
If you agree to everything and then fail to deliver, you're not necessarily being helpful.
You might just be creating more problems.
Exactly.
This is where language and personal growth start to connect.
I was waiting for that.
Were you?
A little.
Because I think a lot of people have trouble saying no for reasons that have nothing to do with English.
Absolutely.
They're worried about disappointing people,
Or being disliked.
or looking selfish,
Or losing an opportunity.
or creating conflict.
Or being judged.
And then language becomes the excuse.
What do you mean?
Someone says, I don't know how to say no politely in English, but sometimes they actually know how to say no.
They just don't feel comfortable saying it.
Exactly.
That's a different problem.
Yes.
And it's worth thinking about.
Because learning a language can expose parts of your personality that you're still figuring out.
That's true.
You may know exactly what you want to say in your own language, but when you have to say it in English, suddenly you feel less confident.
Because you're already thinking about grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary.
And now you also have to deal with the emotional part.
Right.
So maybe learning phrases like, I'd rather not, isn't just about vocabulary.
It's also about becoming comfortable expressing your preferences.
That's a much bigger skill.
And it takes practice.
Let's practice.
Okay.
I'll give you a situation. You respond naturally.
Let's do it.
Your friend invites you to dinner tonight, but you're exhausted.
Sorry, I can't tonight. I'm really tired and I just need a quiet evening.
Good.
Your turn.
Your coworker asks you to help with a task, but you're already overloaded.
I'd love to help, but I've got a lot on my plate right now. I won't be able to get to it today.
Good.
Now you.
Your boss asks you to finish something tomorrow, but you know it's impossible.
I don't think I'll be able to finish it by tomorrow. I could have it ready by Friday, though.
Very good.
Someone asks you a personal question.
I'd rather not talk about that.
Good.
Someone keeps asking you to do something after you've already said no.
I'm sorry, but I've already said no. I'm not able to do that.
That's firmer.
It needs to be.
Right.
And notice something.
What?
We didn't make every answer extremely polite and soft.
No.
Because sometimes you need a stronger boundary.
And being firm isn't the same as being rude.
That's probably one of the most important things from today's episode.
Let's make that distinction really clear.
Being rude is treating someone without respect.
Being firm is clearly communicating what you will or won't do.
You can be firm and respectful at the same time.
For example,
I understand that you need help, but I can't take this on right now.
that's firm.
But respectful.
Or,
I appreciate you asking, but I'm going to pass this time.
also firm.
Still polite.
Or,
I'm not comfortable with that.
very clear.
And you don't have to argue.
That's another thing.
Sometimes people think that if someone disagrees with their no, they need to defend it.
They start arguing.
Exactly.
But you can repeat yourself calmly.
I understand, but I can't do that.
I understand, but I'm not available.
I appreciate it, but I'm going to pass.
You don't need 5 new reasons.
One clear answer is enough.
That's hard for some people.
Very.
Because when someone keeps pushing, you start thinking, maybe my reason isn't good enough.
But you don't necessarily need a better reason.
That's a powerful idea.
If you can't do something, you can't do it.
Of course, there are exceptions.
Sure.
At work, your responsibilities matter.
And relationships matter.
But in everyday life, you don't always need to prove that your reason is valid.
That's true.
Let's bring this back to English.
Okay.
What are some phrases people can actually remember?
Let's build a small toolkit.
Good.
First. Sorry, I can't.
Simple and useful.
Second. I'd love to, but.
Great when you want to soften the refusal.
Third. I'm afraid I won't be able to.
More formal.
Fourth. I'd rather not.
Useful when you don't want to explain too much.
Fifth. I'm not comfortable with that.
Good for boundaries.
Sixth. I don't think I'll be able to.
Useful when you're talking about a future commitment.
Seventh. I can't take that on right now.
Excellent for work.
Eighth. I already have a commitment.
Useful when you don't want to give personal details.
Ninth. Maybe another time.
A softer social refusal.
And 10th. I appreciate you asking, but I'll have to pass.
That's very natural.
Especially for invitations.
Now let's make one thing clear.
What?
Don't memorize all 10 and then try to use them all.
Please don't.
Why?
Because you'll sound like you're taking an English exam.
Fair.
Choose a few that fit your personality.
That's important.
If you naturally speak simply, sorry I can't might be perfect.
If you're in a professional environment, I'm afraid I won't be able to might be useful.
If you want to avoid a personal topic, I'd rather not is great.
If you need to negotiate at work, I can't take that on right now is useful.
You don't need 50 expressions.
You need a few expressions you can actually use.
And then you need to hear them enough times that they become automatic.
That's the listening part.
Yes.
Because the first time you hear, I'd rather not, you might have to translate it in your head.
But after hearing it many times, you understand it immediately.
And eventually, you can use it without translating.
That's the goal.
Not perfect English.
Automatic English.
Useful English.
Real English.
Let's finish with a longer conversation.
Okay.
This time you have a coworker who keeps asking you for help.
All right.
Let's say his name is Daniel.
Okay.
Daniel walks over. Hey, Emma, do you think you could help me with this presentation?
What do you need?
I just need you to look through it and make a few changes.
When do you need it?
By the end of the day.
I'm afraid I won't be able to. I've got my own deadline this afternoon.
Oh, come on, it'll only take 20 minutes.
I understand, but I really can't take it on today.
Could you at least look at the first few slides?
I won't have time today. If you want, I can take a quick look tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning is too late.
I'm sorry, but that's the earliest I can do.
Okay,
Thanks for understanding.
that's a really good example.
Why?
You didn't become defensive.
No,
You didn't give him 10 different excuses.
no,
You didn't apologize 15 times.
no.
You simply repeated your boundary.
It offered an alternative.
Exactly.
That's a skill worth practicing.
Let's make it even harder.
Go on.
What if Daniel says, "You always say no when I ask you for help"?
Oof.
What would you say?
I'd probably say, I understand it may seem that way, but I'm not available to help today.
Very calm.
I don't need to argue about whether I always say no.
Right.
I can just return to the actual situation.
I'm not available today.
Exactly.
That's another communication skill.
Don't get pulled into an argument that isn't necessary.
Stay with the actual issue.
Yes,
And that can make your English much clearer.
because when you're emotional, your language gets messy.
You start talking too much.
You forget the sentence you wanted to say.
You start searching for complicated vocabulary.
And suddenly you sound less confident than you actually are.
So what should you do?
Keep it simple.
Simple English.
Short sentences.
Clear message.
Calm tone.
That's often enough.
And that brings us back to the beginning.
Saying no.
It's only 2 letters.
But there's a lot behind those 2 letters.
Confidence.
Boundaries.
Respect.
Honesty.
And communication.
Maybe the goal isn't to become someone who says no all the time.
Definitely not.
The goal is to become someone who can say yes when they genuinely want to say yes,
And know when they genuinely need to say no.
without feeling guilty about every decision.
That's a much healthier way to look at it.
And if you're learning English, remember that you don't have to wait until your English is perfect before you start expressing yourself clearly.
You can start with very simple sentences.
Sorry, I can't.
I'd rather not.
I'm not available.
I can't take that on right now.
Maybe another time.
I appreciate you asking, but I'll have to pass.
Simple
Natural.
and useful.
Before we finish, let's give you one final challenge.
Imagine someone asks you to do something you don't want to do.
Don't translate from your first language.
Don't search for the most advanced sentence.
Just ask yourself 3 questions.
What do I want to say?
What level of politeness does this situation require?
And do I need to offer an alternative?
Then build your answer.
Maybe it's, sorry, I can't this time.
I'd love to, but I already have plans.
I don't think I'll be able to do that by tomorrow.
I can help you tomorrow, but I can't do it today.
I'm not comfortable with that.
I'd rather not talk about it.
That's enough.
You don't have to turn every refusal into a speech.
And you don't have to say yes just because saying no feels uncomfortable.
That's probably the bigger lesson today.
Language gives you the words.
But confidence gives you the ability to use them.
And the more you practice, the easier it becomes.
So the next time someone asks you for something, pause for a second.
Don't automatically say yes.
Think about what you actually want.
And if the answer is no,
Say it kindly,
say it clearly.
and then move on.
Because no doesn't always mean rejection.
Sometimes it simply means, this isn't right for me right now.
And that's okay.
All right, that's where we're going to leave it today.
Thank you so much for spending this time with us.
We hope this episode gave you more than just a few English expressions.
Hopefully, it also gave you a different way of thinking about communication.
And maybe the next time you need to say no, you'll feel a little more comfortable doing it.
And remember, you don't need perfect English to communicate clearly.
You just need the right words, the right situation, and a little practice.
We'll be back with another episode soon.
Until then, keep listening, keep practicing, and don't be afraid to speak.
And if you really don't want to do something,
You know what to say.
sorry, I can't.
See you next time.
See you.